Peace be upon you, everyone. I'm thrilled to bring you today an enlightened discussion with my dear friend and brother, Khadr. For those of you who may not know him, Khadr is a social media influencer who is part of a new generation of unapologetic young Muslims using their voices to spread the beauty of Islam through creative content production. In our conversation, we dove deep into the latitude of self-expression within the Islamic framework, how to stay grounded with fame, and the importance of having a good support network to maintain one's faith strong. We spoke also a lot about identity, leadership, how to create a lasting impact through the Islamic framework. Khadr's love for Islam is nothing short of inspiring and is very palpable. When talking to him especially, you really feel his love for the Quran and how it fuels him to be at his full potential. I love his commitment to serving our community and the emphasis that he puts on building the youth as a strong masculine Muslim role model. I'm super excited to share this conversation with all of you, as I'm positive that you will enjoy it as much as I have. If this episode resonates with you, please make sure that you share this across your platforms. Don't hesitate to also like, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell icon on my channel. Your support ensures that our conversation, such as this one that hopefully matters, reaches a wider audience. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How are you feeling?
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Feeling great, man. Great to be here, mashallah.
Thank you for coming.
Alhamdulillah.
I appreciate you taking the time. It's good to have you back. You moved back to Montreal now.
Yeah, it feels great to be back, alhamdulillah. I don't know what I was thinking.
Tell us a little bit about what happened, you going away, what happened there, and you coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for all the Muslims, but I think that there's this general consensus among a lot of Muslims that we need to leave the, and not to say that it's correct, but there's this idea that floats around, I think, in a lot of Muslims' heads, where it's like we need to leave the West and go back to our Islamic roots and go back to our Islamic countries. We need to go live a good Muslim life in a good Muslim country, you know. And so that was kind of what I was thinking, especially because I was teaching. I'm a teacher by profession, and I was teaching in a Christian school here in Quebec, because I think it's changing more and more, but as you know, trying to take care of a family as a single provider, as a man in a family trying to be the sole provider, today is very difficult, especially on a teacher salary.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Muslim schools, it's not necessarily their fault, but they're just so underfunded that being a teacher in a Muslim school, you can't feed your family, you can't pay rent and do all those things. And my wife would have to work, and she was pregnant at the time. I wanted to give her a bit of a break. So anyways, all that being said, I was working in Christian school and I was teaching English, and I just didn't feel fulfilled. I'm like, right. I'm you know, as much as I love these children, because I love working with the youth, you know, regardless of their denomination or their religion, I just feel like SubhanAllah, Malcolm X talks about that as well. When he went to Hajj, he's like, SubhanAllah, I love all these different people, but the group that I concern myself most with are those who have my same struggle, the African Americans. So he's like, I love all my Muslim brothers and sisters, and just like me, you know, I love all human beings, but I think the group that I would love to focus on and help more is those I connect best with, and those are the Muslims.
Right.
So I'm working in this Christian school, and I feel like, you know, I want to work with Muslims, and I want to live a good life, and I want to live in an Islamic, you know, country. So we're like, khalas, let's go to the Khalij, let's go to the Arab countries. Start applying all over the place. One school, you know, contacts me back from Kuwait, and they say, yeah, we'd like you to be a teacher here. So I fly my family to Kuwait, and we're like, we're done. You know, we've been thinking about this move for 10 years. Yeah. This is the best thing that's ever happened to our family. I get there, you know, it was March at the time, and Ramadan was in, I think, April. So it was soon after that. So the first month is like honeymoon phase, right? Everything, you're hearing like adhan everywhere. Everyone's Muslim, hijabs everywhere. Salamu alaikum everywhere. You walk into a grocery store, everyone you look at, salamu alaikum, salamu alaikum. Most of them don't respond, but you know, you say it anyway. It's great. You're like, wow, I've been born and raised in Montreal, so I'm like, this is great. And then it was Ramadan, and then, you know, Kuwait, you know, the best qurra in the world, like Sheikh Mishari Rashid, he's a Kuwaiti national, you know, so he leads there. I prayed behind him. You know, Brother Fatih, who came here, you know, to Montreal this Ramadan, and he's in Kuwait as well. All these great, you know, scholars and shuyukh, so you're praying behind the best reciters during Ramadan, best tarawih. It was great, man. Came back in the summertime when the school year ended. We're like, khalas, we're going back there. We're signing like a 10-year contract. We're never coming back to Montreal. We're done. And I went back in September, and it was great. SubhanAllah, doors were opening. They offered me a principal position. They offered my wife a counseling position. They're offering us like big 3-year contracts with bonuses, all expenses paid, you know, house allowance, everything. You don't pay a penny, no tax. all the money is yours. And this is like Kuwaiti, oil money. So this is good money, mashallah. You're right next to the Kaaba. I did Umrah twice. It was great.
Mashallah.
Yeah. And then at some point we're like, khalas, we can't take it anymore. We're sick of this. We have to go back to Montreal. So
sick of what exactly? Because it seems like you had it all.
Yeah, it does seem that way. It seems like you have the dunya and the akhirah, right?
Yeah.
It's not that at all, because you realize that sense of fulfillment that I was lacking, which is the reason why I went there in the first place. I tell brothers, everyone has a different experience. Me, my iman, I feel, had almost never been so low as when I was in Kuwait. Because I think a big part of Islam is giving back. And it's very difficult to do that when Islam is very cultural and the people are not that willing to accept in Islamic support from people they consider to be not from them. And I think it was Corneille who said, ni d'ici ni d'ailleurs, like not from here, not from elsewhere.
Corneille,
like,
the singer, French singer.
Yeah. So I think it was him who said that. So I think what that means is, like, for me, for example, Khadr, I'm too Arab Muslim to be a Montrealer. Like, the people in Montreal don't see me as a Montrealer. I'm born and raised in Montreal. I'm born in, Sacré-Cœur Hospital on Gouin, So I'm born and raised in Montreal. But I'm too Arab to really be Canadian. Like you know what I mean? You get that kind of sense, like, I don't really belong here. But when I go to Kuwait, I'm too Canadian to be Arab, So you don't really feel like you fit in anywhere.
Right.
And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, the Islamic knowledge there is very controlled by the government for good reason. They don't want just anybody to go up and give a speech about whatever. Maybe he has no idea what he's talking about, and it could be harmful for the people. So when the country is an Islamic country, they want to make sure the people who are talking are reputable scholars who have been through a certain level of academics and have reliable sources of information, which is good. But it also exiles a lot of people who want to do good. So basically, I couldn't do any good. I couldn't give any talks. I couldn't help anybody. I couldn't give any halaqat. I couldn't be a part of any charitable organizations. We've tried raising money for the Turkey-Syria earthquake that happened, and they said, you're not allowed to do that. Charitable organizations have to be government run because they don't know who you're giving the money to. They don't know who you're giving the stuff to. So it's all government run, and you can't join the government unless you're Kuwaiti. So it's like you can't really do much, So really what Islam boils down to in this country is you hear the adhan wherever you are. You're praying 5 prayers in the mosque every single day, and then you go home. And then you go to work, and you come home. You provide for your family. You eat. You sleep. You do your prayers. You do your Quran. You go to the mosque. You pray. You come home. That's it. That's Islam. And that's not the Islam that I love. It is Islam, but it's not the holistic Islam that I love.
It's the shell version where the outside looks like if you're doing everything Islamically, but inside there is this lack of attunement with the desire to feel like you're being beneficial and useful, and that you can have a meaningful contribution. Is that how you would?
Absolutely. Okay. And the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the top is so there are 5 or 6 stages, but then there's an extra stage. So the top, generally the one you'll see if you'll Google like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very top you'll have something like self-actualization. So the basic needs are at the bottom. You need your food, your shelter, whatever, and then as you go up, self-actualization, like fulfilling yourself, is like the uppermost part. But there's actually a level above that. And if you Google Maslow's hierarchy of needs extra step, you'll find that Maslow later on had actually developed an extra level at the top, and this is altruism. That a person, once you feel fulfilled in yourself and you feel like you've actualized yourself at the best version, the very next logical thing is to give back. It's this altruistic level, right? And so in this country, you really feel like you can work on yourself, but you can't give anything back to anybody. And that's very depressing to me.
That sucks.
100%. It's very depressing. It's very depressing.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsors for today's episode, Samedi Pastries. Established in 1872, Samedi Pastries isn't just a brand, it's a rich legacy. Revered across the Middle East, This family-owned business stands out not just for its age-old traditions, but for its commitment to healthier pastry options. With offerings that boast a lower fat content than most, without compromising on quality, Samedi Pastries is on a class of its own. Their repertoire is diverse and delightful. From the rich baklavas and mamouls to the delicate knafe and cakes to refreshing ice cream, the list is enticingly long. What sets Samedi Pastries apart is their unwavering dedication to freshness and quality. Every pastries is handcrafted using the finest ingredients that are natural, ensuring that what reaches you is nothing short but perfection. For those of you who live in Montreal, you're in luck. They have two convenient locations, the main one being located at 5995 Boulevard Gouin West, and its second location located on 595 Côte Vertu West. From the bottom of my heart, thank you Samedi Pastries for sponsoring this video and allowing me to produce this type of content. Now, back to the show.
So I told my wife, I said, look, we feel we're far from family, we're far from the deen, we feel our iman is at an all-time low. There are people, Muslims in Montreal, who need our help. There are community members who need our help. The community in Montreal, Muslims aren't going to leave Montreal. There's always going to be Muslims in Montreal. Yeah. It's our home. We speak French, we speak English, we speak a little bit of Arabic. You know, that is the best place for us to use the talent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to give back to the community, because this is not it. It's not over here.
Yeah.
And that sense of emptiness that I felt here that pushed me to leave is the same feeling that made me realize that all the fulfillment I needed was right here. I just wasn't seeking it out. Mm-hmm. And so when we came back, we hit the ground running, man. SubhanAllah. Like we have been planning for months since we decided we were going to leave. And we had a whole bunch of issues with the school there. Because as I told you, man, they were like boosting us up, right? And when we left, all of a sudden, they're like, well, what are you talking about? Like you're going to be principal next year. Your wife was going to be the counselor next year. Like we had built this entire school structure around the work that you have done here. You've done amazing work. And SubhanAllah, they would tell me things like, you know, the way you are as well, mashallah, tabarakallah. Like, I feel like you're a very driven individual. You're a very multi-talented individual. And you understand that if there's something that I don't know how to do, I can learn how to do it. And I think that that's one of the most amazing qualities a person can use for the deen, is to be like, there's no excuse. You know, if something needs to be done, I can try to do it. And that's the kind of mentality I went into the school with in Kuwait. So they were like, you know, we need this website to be done, but we don't have $50,000 for a website. We don't have any web developers. We don't have 6 months to do it. I said, I'll do it for free for you tonight. So I went online. I found out how to make a website. I went on some, you know, website development, you know, program. I paid like $50 and they gave me all the tools I needed. And I made a website that very night. I spent 12 hours on it and it was done. Next day it was done for like $50 and, you know, one day. And they were, you know, blown away. And they were like, this is amazing. You know, can you do this project and more projects? And I was doing all these things, but then I felt like, look, I'm putting 12 hours in for what? For what? Yeah. I should be making, how many mosques have terrible websites that are outdated and don't work and the prayer times aren't updated and, you know, like, to be real, like garbage websites.
Yeah.
I could have done that in any one of the 12 hours of all 28 years I had spent in Montreal and I didn't. Mm-hmm. It's on me. Yeah. Like the community here needs these kinds of people. And I think leaving was good because it made us realize how much work we could put in and we're not. And it motivated us to come back and do all the things that we'd always talked about. So, you know, all the community stuff we'd wanted to do, we came back and started that right away. We didn't waste any time. We started up a halaqah, mashallah, in a mosque that generally was not that open to halaqat at Ansam Living Masjid. We're having conferences, we're having outreach programs, we're having a revert halaqah we want to start because there's a lot of converts to Islam, reverts to Islam, whatever you want to call it, who, you know, struggle in their deen in the first few months, lack that community, lack that knowledge. We're starting that up as well, inshallah. My wife is starting a sisters coaching business where she's going to be helping, you know, sisters with family issues or with, you know, self-development issues. I started the social media page. You know, alhamdulillah, it's been going great. We grew like tens of thousands of followers because people believe in a project that you believe in as well. So all of that to say, it's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But my message to anybody who's watching this and anybody who's been thinking, man, I got to leave the West and go back to my Islamic roots. It's like, listen, there are Muslims here who need you. And if you have any ounce of talent, which you do, then it is your God-given, I would say, responsibility to use your God-given rights and your God-given talents to benefit those people. Mm-hmm. And for you to just leave and say, look, I'm going to watch out for myself first and foremost, I don't think that's, I'm not going to, you know, speak on behalf of Islam, but I don't think that's right. Mm. That was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, bro, I love your answer. And I'm really glad that you came to that conclusion, because what you spoke about, in my opinion, is nothing but the truth. And believe me when I tell you, I've seen a lot of people also romanticize the idea of doing hijra and going away And I've always believed that the grass is greener where you water it. And it all boils down to you understanding that at the end of the day, what Allah is going to ask you is, what did you do with the unique resources and skills that I gave you? He's not going to ask you, why were you not like Umar ibn Khattab? Why weren't you not like Ali radiallahu anhu, or all the great Khalifas or the Sahabas? And we have so many opportunities here in Canada and in the West to do good.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's an amazing thing that you came to that realization, and it's a beneficial experience because now you know. And if you wouldn't have experienced it,
I'd still be thinking about it.
that's right.
Yeah.
So
And I think the more you do it here, the more it motivates other people as well.
yeah,
That's a big thing because, of course, you need examples.
Yeah.
And so, for example, and again, I know I'm speaking about you because you're in front of me, but also because I think that has a big impact as well. The work that I see you do, I'm like, man, this guy doesn't sleep. Like, mashallah, tabarakallah. I'm sure you do. Allahumma barik. And I don't mean to boost your ego or anything, but I mean, like, there are certain people, you look at them and you're like, man, this guy works a lot.
Yeah.
This guy's doing a lot of stuff. And what am I doing? Like,
you're very kind with your words. I mean, the work is heavy, and it's not for the faint of hearts, but I honestly think that it's a way for me to have my sins erased, and it's for me to feel like, if I'm ever going to do a mistake, I'm always going to, and I was to choose between overdoing and underdoing, I try to always be on the side of like overdoing. But like after Ramadan, bro, I'm not going to lie to you, I go into like a coma. It's hard to walk. And I don't like that, to be honest. I'm trying to find a balance because I don't think it should be like that. But it's also, I think, from a place of insecurity where you're always worried, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And it keeps you up at night. And especially in my line of work where we do charity, you see things that shook you to your very core.
yeah.
And it prevents you from sleeping at night. And it's not easy because you have this sort of alarm and that bell that's constantly ringing at the back.
I get that 1,000,000%. And I think
tough.
that's one of the most difficult jobs. One of the most, so for example, I was, some charitable organizations reached out to me as actually when we were still in Kuwait. So it's funny, the day I came back from Kuwait, the morning I came back 7 a.m. I landed in Montreal. 6 p.m. the same day I was back at the airport, and I flew to Germany and then to Albania to do some charitable work in Albania. And that was one of the most stressful experiences in my life. Not because of the time difference, which was insane, by the way, because I went like forward and backwards in time a couple of times. So like Kuwait's forward in time, then I came back in time to Montreal, then forward in time to Germany, and then it was all messed up. My biological clock was like gone, like my internal clock was gone. But that wasn't what was stressful. What was stressful was not the lack of sleep, the lack of food, the lack of all that. It was the fact that I'm like, okay, this charitable organization has given me X amount of days to raise how much ever money I can for these people. And you see these people who are living in like dire situations, right? Circumstances that like, subhanAllah, I almost feel bad that I have never had to experience that. Like, I feel like how am I going to be questioned on my blessings?
Yeah.
Seeing people live like that. What am I doing? And it's a very stressful thing to think about. And I told them I don't like doing this charity work because I never feel like I'm doing enough. And that is incredibly stressful because I'm like, I need to raise more money for these people. I need to do more. And it's like, you pause for a second and you go home and you have a meal and you're like, I shouldn't be having this meal. I should be working for them. It's like, no, like relax. You need to eat. You need to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. But then it's like, okay, what new idea can I think of to raise more money? How much, can I contact this person or post this story or do that? It's like, I gotta rush. Is it never enough? Like, okay, I raised, $40. It's a food box for a family, but what about that family? They don't have a food box. I gotta raise another $40. Should I put my own $40? Okay, sure. But then I also need money as well, but I don't need as much money as them.
Yeah.
It's this crazy thing. I didn't like it.
It's a loop, essentially. It's a vicious circle.
Very difficult for me to deal with that. I don't know. SubhanAllah, I so much respect people who do it, and very fulfilling. At the end, I think, alhamdulillah, we were able to reach over like almost $100,000 for them,
MashaAllah,
which was incredible. Between alhamdulillah,
but
not just myself, between me and the team, everybody who worked on it, Allahumma barik, we reached about $100,000, and it was like very fulfilling. And you're like, wow, all this khair was done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we were able to make that happen. But it's like you say, it's like, am I doing enough?
Yeah.
Like, is there more I can be doing? Should I be doing more? Will I be questioned on this? It's very stressful.
What do you do on a personal level that brings the most meaning to you? Because you're an educator, so I would assume that it's teaching or to empower others. And I followed your work as well. You've done some incredible work with the ICC Broussard Community Masjid, and now it's like bustling, and I can feel that there's your touch in there, mashallah. But on a personal level, I mean, what is it that you get the most meaning from?
I think it's so important to feel that you have a closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yourself, and people feel that in different ways. For me, I feel if I don't do my Quran on a certain day, like my Quran routine on a certain day, I feel empty on that day. And there's a project we started just like 5-6 days ago. People kept telling me it's going to flop, it's not going to work out, and honestly, I don't care, because it's not for them. It's for me and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not about the views, because the views on those videos in particular that I'm gonna explain right now, they're very low compared to my other videos. Like, some videos will reach like 100,000, 500,000, 1 million views, and these videos have like 5,000 views, and it's good. I don't care, because that's something I need to do for me. And it's basically, we read one page of Quran a day, and then we take one lesson from that page, and it's about tadabbur, it's about reflecting on those lessons. And there's 604 pages. It's a 604 day project, so we're at day 7 today, or day 6 today. And inshallah, it's going to be going for about 2 years. But that for me is like my food. It's my nourishment. That's what I need, because without that, I can't go and do what I love to do, and what really gives me purpose, which is helping someone who is far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what I love to do. That's what I feel absolutely like. I can't describe the amount of energy and life that gives me when I can help someone get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I know what it's like to be far from Allah, and it's a very depressing life. You try to find purpose in everything else, and nothing gives it to you, and you seek it and in all the things people tell you to seek it in, and in your desires. And there's never a more depressing moment than someone who is chasing after something other than Allah, and then gets it, and then is disappointed in how little fulfillment it gives them. And I see so many young guys going through that, and it's always the same couple of things. It's their desires, it's girls, it's drugs, it's popularity, it's money, it's whatever it is, right? There's like a certain couple of things that are like quite common, and then there's the outliers, but those are generally it. And they chase it and chase it and chase it, and they don't get. And when they get it, it's like depressing, and it's like, man, what else is there? It's like, listen, man, it's been in you the whole time, and it's your fitrah, and it's calling you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if I can help bring someone to that, then that's amazing for me. But I can't do that if my Quran is not on point. That's personally for me.
Yeah.
I feel like if I don't do my Quran routine, then I'm far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's insincere when I go to reach someone. When I feel my iman tank is full with Quran, then I feel like I can go and bring these people in. And if not, then that's a very personal thing. I think everybody has their own preferences. Some guys it's fasting, some guys it's whatever it is. But for me, it's Quran, and then it's reaching out to the youth.
What is one of your favorite verses in the Quran?
By far, I think the one that I recite when I feel like a low iman is Surah Al-Duha. Because it's so reflective, I think, of that feeling of you feel like you're far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Like Allah swears by the duha, and he swears by the forenoon, he swears by the night. He says, I have not forsaken you, I have not betrayed you, I have not left you. And the next life is better for you than this life. But Allah will still give you so that you are happy. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes into these next few ayat that I just feel like He's calling out to me directly. I feel like He's speaking to me directly. ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, did He not find you an orphan, and He found you an orphan, like weak, and He gave you the strength. And did He not find you lost, and He guided you? And did He not find you poor, and He enriched you? فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. So do not, neglect the orphan. وَأَمَّا السَّائِلُ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. And do not reject the person who is asking for help. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِثْ. And as for the blessings of your Lord, then, proclaim them and speak about them. It's a rough translation. It's my own, brain translation. It's what I get from the surah. I'm sorry it was a bit choppy. But to me, reciting that, I feel like we all kind of feel like orphans at some stage in our lives. We all kind of feel like alone. We all kind of feel like our parents don't get us at a certain point. We all kind of feel like I want to find my own purpose, my own, track in life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave that to me. And I felt very lost, and Allah guided me. And I felt very poor, like I had nothing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me everything with Islam. And so when the orphan comes to you, or when the needy person comes to you, do not, reject them, and help these people, help other people. When people come to you who need the same help Allah gave you, then you help them as well. And all the good things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, use them for His sake. So Allah hasn't neglected you. Allah hasn't betrayed you. The next life is better for you. Don't worry about it. Allah's going to give you good in this life. Allah gave you so much, you should give back. That's what I get from that surah. And that really, I think, sums up my life, and the kind of life I want to live.
It's beautiful. One of the things that I like a lot about you and your work is that, within the Muslim community, there's a phenomenon that's been coined by one of my good friends. There is a lot of photocopy Muslims, meaning Muslims that essentially, when they are going through self-expression, are just trying to check mark the box, basically. Like, you ask them personal questions like, tell me a little about you. I'm a Muslim. Okay, tell me about your hobbies. I pray. Tell me about, an exciting trip you've done. Hajj. It feels like they're just trying to...
Cookie cutters, right?
Yeah, cookie cutter answers, one shoes fits all. And there's this fear of self-expression because obviously we want to preserve the sanctity of our identity, our Muslimness, our faith. But I feel that fear sometimes go overboard, and it prevents us from having the ability to speak intelligently and share the beauty of our faith to other people. And I find that you're very good at knowing the latitude which are allowed within Islam to self-express without going overboard or speaking as an authority or as a scholar, or because let's be honest, the Muslim community has more to offer the world than the world has to offer anything to them.
1,000,000%.
We're sitting on a gold mine and we don't know it. And being a former Islamophobe myself, I wish there was more voices giving me the ability to understand the nuances of what is it to be a Muslim, what is Islam. And my question to you is, first of all, how can we empower more people within the Muslim community, especially the youth, as an educator, in your opinion, to reclaim their own narrative by doing what you're doing? Because honestly, it's one of the main purpose of this podcast. I myself don't consider myself to be knowledgeable. I don't even consider myself a student of knowledge. If you go back to the classical definition of what it means to be a student of knowledge, I'm not even close to that. I'm a pigeon. I just eat the crumbs on the floor wherever I find it. I just try to share. I'm really inspired by the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, share of me one hadith, if you can, just one. So how do we go about creating that paradigm shift? And can you also, that's a two, dimensional question. How can we empower more Muslims to speak, within the latitudes of what our faith's allowed, and clarify maybe a bit, what are the latitudes? What are the places where you shouldn't go and the places where you should go, in your opinion?
That's an excellent question, mashallah. So I think, firstly, there's one brother actually a long time ago. His name was Rahil Beg. He's in Ottawa right now, but he used to be very active here in Montreal, mashallah. And he took me aside one time when I was 14 years old, and he said something to me that's more than half a lifetime later, it's in my head. You mentioned ICC Brassard. They printed that sentence for me on a T-shirt when I left to Kuwait because they appreciated the work I had done with them, and they felt like that sentence was very representative. And it says, "What comes from the heart goes to the heart."
Oh, beautiful.
It's very powerful. And I think one of the things that my wife and I realized had the most impact on the community and empowered the most amount of people. And you talk about the Brassard Halaqa, mashallah. We started off with 2-3 guys, and then 5, and then 10, and then 15. Now they have 200 teenagers on a weekly basis coming to their halaqas, mashallah, empowered to share Islam, talk about Islam, spread Islam, because they need to see people who are sincere and dedicated individuals. When you start a project and then 1 week it's on and 1 week it's off, and you're not fully committed, and the kid comes to you, he needs some help, you're not there for him, you talk without checking your sources, you just say whatever you feel like saying, you're not a reliable source of information, you're not a reliable person, then all of these kids who may have looked up to you or may have taken something from that feel that you're not authentic, and they don't feel touched by anything that you're doing, and it doesn't empower or encourage them or motivate them to do anything. And I think the more authentic you are and the more dedicated and sincere you are, then they will see that as, okay, this is a role model that actually cares about me. This guy cares that I go to paradise. I should care too. I think that's really the most important thing when you're working with the community, is to make people feel like you care about them and that you're sincere in that. And that will wake their senses up and feel like, okay, I should help others too. How can I help others? Okay, there's certain knowledge I need, there's certain background that I need. And we started what's called the Leadership Halaqa in the South Shore. And the whole point of that was to train these next generation of guys.
Right.
And again, this grew and grew and grew. And I think that's how you empower people, is by showing them, one, that there are people out there who sincerely care about them and want them to grow. And the second thing is to make sure that what they're doing is on the right path. They need those role models to accompany them, and they need scholars to be around them that they can ask questions to, reliable sources of information. And so for us, that was Imam Fudail at ICC Brassard, at the mosque in ICC Brassard. He was our reference check. And right now, subhanAllah, it's amazing stuff they've been doing, man, since I left. And they've been training all these younger guys to give speeches more and more at the halaqah. And every time they make a speech, they have to first send it to Imam Fudail. And he has to, sort of like veto it, or vet it, and read through it and correct any mistakes and send it back to them. And then they talk like that. And that gets the Muslim accustomed to the idea that, okay, there's a whole science behind narrating hadith and a whole science behind talking about Quran that I need to be very careful about. Just the fact that the Shaykh, it doesn't mean that he knows everything, but he sees the way the Shaykh thinks, right? Like maybe, so this is one example. I'll give you an example, by the way. And I'm sorry, all my answers are very long-winded, but I'm trying to be thorough. So one time I was giving a talk, and I thought it was a great talk, and I was talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the dua, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit quluban ala dinik. O overturner of hearts, keep our hearts firm on your religion, on your way of life, right? This is one of the most repeated dua of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Awesome.
And when I did it, I did this with my hand. I said, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit quluban ala dinik. Oh, the overturner of hearts, keep our hearts firm on your religion. And one brother came to see me later, and he said, you shouldn't have done that with your hand. I said, why? He said, because you're imitating the hand of Allah. You're saying that Allah overturns the hearts and he should keep the heart firm on your religion. And I said, actually, I wasn't imitating Allah. I'm not saying that Allah changes our hearts with I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not saying Allah with his hand overturns hearts. I'm imitating the heart. My hand, when I was giving the talk, my hand was imitating the heart, how the heart overturns, not Allah's hand. And we had a discussion about that. And he said, okay, but just so you know, when you're giving a talk. And so that to me taught me two things. One, it made me very conscious that when I'm talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right now, so since then, about 10 years ago, I put my hands down. Just to be careful, because sometimes you say things like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees his slave, and you don't want to do this, right? Because you don't want to say that my eyes are like Allah's eyes. Well, it's very technical. It's very minor to some people, but I think it's good to think about these things, right? And so the fact that he advised me like that, it didn't, and that's not, it's an isolated example, but what it taught me is that I need to be very careful when I talk about Allah, which is a good lesson to learn. And I need to be very careful when I'm sharing knowledge, not to not share knowledge, but that we just need to be respectful and careful. And so now I'll generally be more mindful of things like that, and I'll check with a scholar, or I'll check with someone of knowledge before going, giving a talk. And you learn as you grow. And I've made a lot of mistakes in the past that, alhamdulillah, we don't, you learn from it.
So going back to the question, what are the latitudes for self-expression within the, average Muslim to share his or her stories, his or her experiences, or share hadith and all of that? What is it that you think makes us fear that we're going overboard? Because look, when I started this podcast, a lot of people said, what are you going to share? You're not a scholar. And I'm like, yes, I know. Thank you. I don't pretend to be one. And I'm not trying to be a scholar, but I do believe that, now you have all these pseudo self-help, so-called specialists on YouTube, social media, who openly advocate themselves that they don't even practice what they're preached. They're just sharing concept. They're becoming rich out of it. And for us Muslims, when we look at that, we're like, wow, that's fraudulent people. How could you? Because Allah says in the Quran, He hates people who don't act on what they preach. So that would be like one example of, hey, if you're going to speak, here's a latitude. Be careful. Don't go and talk about things that you don't preach.
What you don't do,
For you, do you have other sort of like red lines or
absolutely
latitudes that you follow in order to make sure that you're always following?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I love that you asked that and you framed it in that way because, for example, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, one time people came to him and said, we want you to talk about freeing slaves. This is at a time when slavery was rampant. And he said, yeah, I'll talk about it. Next khutbah, he didn't talk about it. And they're like, all right, maybe next week he'll do it. Second khutbah, he didn't talk about it. Third khutbah, he didn't talk about it. Then he did talk about it, like 3 or 4 weeks later. And people were freeing slaves left and right. And they're like, why didn't you talk about it for 3 weeks? He said, I'd never freed a slave. So I made enough money to buy a slave and then free him. And then I gave the talk. And it touched people. And so don't talk about things that you yourself don't do. That's a huge one. Because it won't touch people the same way. What comes from heart goes to the heart, right? You need to first feel it in your heart and then do it. The second thing is I would say don't talk without knowledge. If there's something that you don't know, you don't need to talk about it. Talk about what you know. Like you said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Share from me even if it's one ayah, one verse, or one hadith. So talk about the things you know and feel confident that there is an answer. Islam will have an answer for everything. One brother, mashallah, Adil Ghadban, he does some amazing da'wah work, on TikTok and Instagram lives. A lot of people took shahada from speaking to him, mashallah. And I told him, like, bro, what if someone asks you a question, you don't know the answer? He goes, I don't answer it. I'll tell him that I'll get the answer for him. And he's like, that shouldn't stop you from giving da'wah. Because another one, Hamza Tsortsis, he converted to Islam. He's a Greek brother, mashallah, who used to actually preach against Muslims from a philosophical standpoint, and then he accepted Islam, and now he does debates all over the world. He had debated Richard Dawkins, where completely, mashallah, really proved Islam to be the more beautiful standpoint. And I said to him, what pushed you to convert? He said, I was tired of losing against Muslims, because Muslims always won. He's like, I wanted to win, so I became Muslim. And then he really fell in love with the religion. But he's like, I just wanted to win debates at first because these Muslims guys are always winning. Because subhanAllah, they have the answers. We need to feel comfortable that we're confident that Islam has the answer to everything. And if you don't know it, you go find out.
What is it in your experience, the biggest issue or the biggest crisis facing the Muslim community here, specifically in the West, living as a minority? And again, don't feel the pressure to speak as an expert.
No, yeah.
But I want you to feel comfortable to say, hey, based off of what I've seen within the youth, within my involvement, this is what I can see from my line of sight.
I think the answer to that is so multifaceted, but it's also not. I think there's one clear answer that to me is very obvious, and it's the lack of dedication of the people who are capable of doing the work.
Okay. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. There's no commitment. There's no dedication to anything.
People are becoming flimsy. People are becoming demotivated. What is it? Do you think lack of knowledge?
No.
Could we root this back to lack of knowledge? Because if you have the knowledge, do you understand what is at stake and the importance, therefore, to move?
I think there's lots of knowledgeable people, man. Unfortunately, I just think that, I don't know, man, is it shaitan? I don't know what it is, but people are not doing anything. So many people are not doing anything. If you think to yourself, who are the shakers and movers of the Montreal community? A handful of people will come to mind. You can think of I can think of maybe 15 people in all of I'm talking Laval, South Shore, West Island, Montreal East, the entirety of Montreal. I can think of like 15 people that I think are very dedicated to helping the Muslims in Montreal. Dude, there are thousands, tens. I don't know the demographics, but
it's around 300,000 Muslims in Quebec.
Allahumma barik.
Only, yeah.
Allahumma barik.
It's the second most populated province after Ontario, Muslim-wise.
And I'm pretty. And again, I don't know that maybe you know the demographics better than me, but I'm sure the concentration of that is probably closer to Montreal than it is outside in the region areas of Quebec. Wallahu a'lam, right? There's probably a larger body of Muslims in Montreal. Point is to say, it's nothing. It's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. And the Brassard Halaqa.
Yeah.
It had been going on for over a decade, man. And it wasn't bumping. Like, nobody was going. It's like 3-4 guys. And I was part of the problem too. I'm not gonna lie, man. For 2 years, I was on and off too. They'd be like, yo, Khadr, you want to give a halaqah? Sure, I'll give it one this Friday. And then, on Friday, I'm at home, had a long day at work with my wife, and we're like, I'm like, you know what? I could text one of the guys. I say, yo, I'm not feeling it. Can you give it instead? That's on me, man. And I'm embarrassed to say it. But that is the problem. And then the other guy, he gets it last second. He has a choice to make now. He's like, do I save the halaqah and show up and give a half-done job? Or do I, just say it's canceled for today and we'll just get it back next week? But think of that one kid who needs that motivation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided him to come to the mosque that day, and he needs that. And it's canceled that night. Why?
Yeah.
Because I was lazy. Because I didn't show up. I didn't pull
Straight
up. And it's on me. I think that's on me. And so the reason that the halaqah grew so exponentially is because I think some of us, me and a couple of other guys, realized that this was the problem. This was the problem. And we committed. Every single week we're there. Every week we give a stellar halaqah. We don't half do the job. We prep. Some guys, subhanAllah, you invite them for halaqah and you'll be like, what are you going to talk about today? He's like, I'll see when I show up. What are you talking about? Can you imagine a doctor showing up to a surgery and being like, what are you going to do in the surgery? Like, I'll just wing it. What are you talking about? These are people's lives at stake. And I believe that the soul is so much more important than the physical body. So why are we putting so much emphasis on a physician's job, on how he has to prepare and be ready for the task, and the Muslim preacher is just winging it at the last second? It's absolutely embarrassing and it's unacceptable.
Right.
And so when we take it seriously, guys show up, man. When they feel like someone's dedicated. And subhanAllah, this is one of the things that inspires me. When I come to a podcast studio like this, subhanAllah, for those who are watching, Eduardo found out that I was, just recently came to Montreal, and he offered to Uber me here because he thought ahead. He's like, this guy might not have a car. He lives in Kuwait, which was true. I didn't have a car. My dad lent me one of his cars because I'm here permanently now, and we're gonna restart our lives inshallah until I buy one. But he thought ahead, man, and he offered it to me not at 5 minutes before the podcast. He offered it to me like 2 hours in advance, which is incredible. Which means he woke up, realized, thought through his day, and said, okay, this guy's gonna need to get here. Okay, this guy comes from Kuwait. Okay, maybe he's not here for a long time. Okay, I should send him an Uber. Let me text him. That's what we need, man. I show up here, beautiful studio, mashallah, good setup, professional setup, dedicated people. This is what we need. And I tried my best to be here on time. I was here at 11:59, a minute before 12. It's on me. I feel bad about that. I should have been here on time, because we need to set a certain standard, man.
Yeah.
This professionalism, this hard work, this dedication, it's embarrassing that we do it for everything except for our Islam. So number one problem that is preventing people from really embracing their Islam fully, I think, is the lack of dedicated individuals, man. You set up a meeting, half the guys don't show up. Like, what are you doing?
It's so interesting what you're saying, because I think wherever there's a smoke, there's a fire. And I think, although I couldn't agree more with you, when I think about the issue from the lens that you're explaining it, I think what you're actually talking about is the smoke. And if you can allow me to challenge you a bit on that concept, because I think personally the issue here is that we have the wrong definition of what success is. We are in a society that is constantly obsessed with results. And when you look at the condition of the Muslim world, I mean, name me one Muslim country right now that's doing really well. I mean, it's more the exception than the norm. So it's really easy for us to lose heart or to feel like it's all doom and gloom. And we have this constant obsession of measuring success with quantification or what I can count, or, we want to feel like there's going to be a positive outcome from what we have done.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, when we go and start any sort of initiative or we consider it, we'll be like, I don't think it's going to yield too much. So we have to, I think, create that paradigm shift inspired by that hadith where, is it a hadith or an ayah in the Quran? I'm not sure. You'll probably be able to tell me. But where if we knew that it was the end of time and we were on our way to plant a tree, still plant that tree.
It's a hadith, yeah.
In other words, we have to redefine what success means, and success has to be defined in just doing the act.
Yes.
And this is something that I got from someone who you know really well, Omar Khan. May Allah bless him, because he helped me a lot as a convert in really shaping my understanding of what success is.
Yeah, he's one of those 15 guys.
Oh yeah, and he left to Toronto. Yeah, it's so sad. But I think like you're right, and there's also another dimension to this answer. I really think that our society is more and more becoming mediocre because now you get a medal for participating. You know what I mean? There's no more the idea of like, there's number 1, number 2, and number 3. And if you're number 2, you're the winner of the losers. Like there's no more this drive to want to be the best.
That's a societal thing. I think that's a worldly thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things when I was in Kuwait. Like I told you, listen, we were there in October. The school year starts in September. In October, they told me next year we want to make you principal. That's not normal. And it's because I just put in effort, period. Like, people don't put in effort anymore.
That's true.
To anything.
That's fact. I feel it too.
Like the website example, right? They're like, we're going to say $50,000 in 6 months to make a website. What are you talking about? It's a couple of clicks. You can do it tonight. Like, you keep working on it. But I mean, like, we blow things up. Like, we're going to organize an event and someone says, oh, we need like a month to just set up the details. Like, dude, let's sit together for 4 hours and figure it all out. Why a month? Like, you work on it throughout the month. I'm not saying, do it and then not think about it again. Everything gets better the more you work on it. But it's like you say, man, it's just like everyone is just so lackadaisical about everything, and there's no more drive.
So here's a practical question for you.
Yeah.
I've always conceptualized knowledge, enlightenment as a form of privilege. Just like money. You either have it in the bank or you don't. You can work to have it, or you can be lazy and not have any. The same way that we should never look down on people who are poor and begging on the street as like, hey, you're just lazy, you're not working, you're just, not doing your fair share to better your condition. Do you think you can also draw a parallel and also apply this concept as well to drive, or this fire of reviving the sunnah of, like you said, being prepared and working hard? Thank you for the compliments, by the way. I honestly feel like, wallahi, if there's one thing I'm sure of, brother, is that I don't do enough.
Okay.
That's one thing that I'm sure of. And I'm not saying this with fake humility. I'm saying this with full concern for myself.
I get that.
And
that's the line of work you're in, man. Like I said, charity work makes you feel that way.
But there's also a little bit of my education. My mom was an orphan, and she was literally raised on her own. So for her to survive, she had to always overdo it. It was the only thing that kind of guaranteed her survival, and she inculcated those type of values into me. The same way that if you're born into a rich and wealthy family, you'll inherit a lot of money, and that's going to make you privileged.
Yeah.
So I feel privileged to have been raised by such an incredible mother who gave me these values. So the question here is, well, I guess it's a twofold question again. Don't you think that you can apply the concept of privilege? Hey, here's what I see from my line of sight because I was blessed enough to be at the right place at the right time.
Right.
In this case here, my parents.
Yeah.
And what can we do to not look down upon people? Because you have to meet people where they're at as well.
Yeah.
Right. As an educator, you know this better than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know more.
Yeah.
So what is your best way to create that paradigm shift based on your experience? You've mentioned a little bit before the importance of being prepared and leading by example, and taking it seriously and caring, from the heart. Is there anything more?
Yeah, I think those the two questions are so beautifully tied together, mashallah. And just like, okay, so I'll take your example. Your mother, mashallah, you saw her do some amazing things, and it created the drive in you that allows you to now be propelled and do other great things in the world, mashallah. I feel my parents are the same way. My mom would wake up 4 a.m., make everyone's lunches, make sure my dad was up, got his coffee. My dad would leave the house at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., come back home at 10 p.m., 11 o'clock, He'd sleep 5 hours, go back to work. He didn't get a fancy car. He didn't live a luxurious life. He put it all for us. That showed me, that was my role model to see like, okay, this is the amazing people that I have to contend with, right? There are people in the world who work that hard. So the first thing I would say is just like how we had those role models, we now need to be those role models for the people who might not have had that privilege, right? Just like how if you're a wealthy person, you get a lot of money, you give it in charity to those who don't have it. Yeah. You grow up in a place with a lot of drive, you're very motivated, you give that back to the people. And the best way to do that is to expect more of people. People are capable of so much, and when you expect more of them, it wakes them up. It lights a fire underneath them. And that was one of the things that guys mentioned when I came back from Kuwait. The very first Friday I was here, I went back to the Brassard Halaqah. I hadn't been there in about a year. And there's a lot of guys who started coming, who didn't used to come, but a lot of guys who used to show up and didn't anymore. Some of the OGs back at the Halaqah, like some of the guys that started off with us weren't there anymore. And when they found out I was there, like, oh my God, we got to like come and chill after the Halaqah. So we went to a restaurant. It was one guy I was talking with. And I was like, so how's your Arabic classes? Because we had started taking Arabic classes together. And he's like, oh, I got, my school and this. I'm like, so when are we starting again? He goes, well, inshallah. I said, no, when are we starting again? He goes, I'm just going to finish finals. I said, give me a day When are we starting again? Wednesday, 9 a.m. Is that good for you? And one of the other guys' table was like, mashallah, Khadr's back. Because when you expect that of people, then they show up.
Yeah.
Because they're capable. But if the world is all just like, oh, take an Arabic class. Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, make dua, brother. Okay, cool. I'm making dua. What are you doing about it? Like, can you show up at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday for half an hour?
Yeah.
So I think be the role model to show people, be on time, be hardworking, be productive, care about them, and then expect all of that from them as well.
Yeah.
The halaqas used to start at, let's say, 7 o'clock. And then guys would start showing up around 7:05, 7:10, 7:15. And before I took over, they used to wait for them. I don't wait. I start at 7 o'clock. You missed the halaqa, you missed the halaqa. And after the halaqa, I'll make everyone feel bad. And I'll say, guys, it's unacceptable. If you guys were to show up to an interview 15 minutes late, there's no way you'd get the job. Show up on time. Come early. So I think setting that standard and expecting it of people kind of wakes them up, especially in a society where everything is so easy. It kind of makes them feel like, oh, wow, maybe there's really a purpose to life.
Yeah, 100%. And what you're saying is ties into one of my favorite leadership definition, which is that a real leader is someone who communicates people's worth so clearly that they get to see it within themselves and want to manifest it in the world. So in other words, you're externalizing, hey, I see in you that you're capable of doing more. And by what you're saying here is by expecting more, while the other person says, hey, Khadr, see something in me.
Yeah.
That makes me feel
valued, capable.
Yeah, capable. And it's such a beautiful thing. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors for today's episode, Samadi Pastries. Established in 1872, Samadi Pastries isn't just a brand, it's a rich legacy. Revered across the Middle East, this family-owned business stands out not just for its age-old traditions, but for its commitment to healthier pastry options. With offerings that boast a lower fat content than most, without compromising on quality, Samadi Pastries is on a class of its own. Their repertoire is diverse and delightful. From the rich baklavas and mamouls to the delicate knafe and cakes to refreshing ice cream, the list is enticingly long. What sets Samadi Pastries apart is their unwavering dedication to freshness and quality. Every pastries is handcrafted using the finest ingredients that are natural, ensuring that what reaches you is nothing short but perfection. For those of you who live in Montreal, you're in luck. They have two convenient locations. The main one being located at 5995 Boulevard Gouin West, and its second location located on 595 Côte Vertu West. From the bottom of my heart, thank you Samadi Pastries for sponsoring this video and allowing me to produce this type of content. Now, back to the show. What is it that you think differentiates the Islamic definition of leadership with the traditional, I guess, secular definition of what leadership is, if there is even a difference between both? Because I think if you look at the concept of leadership now in the secular world is really kind of being redefined by Simon Sinek, in the corporate world. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, the golden circle and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love, by the way. I love the golden circle concept.
Yeah, me too. I love him as an author.
Why, how, what,
I love him as an author, but I really feel like he just put a secular spin to the prophetic model of leadership, which is talk to people, doesn't matter their status, the same way.
Yeah.
If you talk to the janitor, talk to him as if you were to talk to the president of the United States, put the people first.
Yeah.
But before that, I felt like before he came into the scene, the idea of a leader is like, tell people what to do. It's like a little bit like a boss. And the Islamic definition is, and I don't want to answer the question for you because I'm really curious to know what you think.
Right.
But is more like people in my care. I have to take care of people, and serve them, like you said. Is there anything in your perspective or your opinion that is different between both definitions? Do you even have like a particular definition that you gravitate towards?
Yes, definitely. So I think the two things that I try to keep in mind, and this is one thing that I put in my my offer letter when I was applying to be principal. It was the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatih." You're all shepherds and you're all responsible for your flock. So whoever you are, you have people who you can have an influence on, and you are the leader for those people, whether you accept it or not. That's just a reality, And the best way to be that leader is to lead by example. So you don't tell the sheep, go graze over there, and you don't go with them. You're with the sheep, you're with the flock, you're with the people, and you're helping them and showing them the example of what they need to be doing. So at a halaqah, I will go out of my, and I'm using the halaqah as an example because that's just where I spent most of my Islamic, community work. It's the mosques and the halaqahs and the youth gatherings. But I will be the first one to get up and go and pick up the trash. I will be the first one to go and clean up and put away the tables. And I'll be the first one to do all of these things and to go and take the kids who people are neglecting or shunning, whether the kid is too shy and doesn't feel comfortable, joining the group, or the kid feels that he's very sinful, or he doesn't look the part of the Muslim. He has earrings, he has whatever. And I'm going to go and particularly talk to these people and show the community this is what you need to be doing. And you need to speak to them, like you said, at the same level as they are, like you're not prioritizing. And Surah Abasa, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he advised the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when the blind man came to you and you were giving da'wah to these leaders of Quraysh and you thought that these people were more worth your time more, and this blind man who's already a Muslim or is coming Muslim or a newly Muslim, he's asking you these questions, and these leaders of Quraysh were kind of scoffing at the state of the Muslims. This poor blind man, this weak man is who your followers are represented by. He's the one asking questions. And Prophet ﷺ, abasa wa tawalla, he didn't say anything, right? Because the man is blind. He didn't want him to feel bad, but you could see in his face that he was maybe not annoyed, but he felt something of irritation. And Allah made an entire chapter in the Quran about that, saying that's you forget these people. This man came to you seeking purity, and what would make you know that this is not who you should focus on? Like, these people don't care about what you're saying. You're giving value to the wrong people. Your perception of who has value and how much attention to give to who is skewed in the wrong way. You need to focus more on these people. And this was a beautiful correction by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that teaches all of us what a leader is. It's someone who takes care of his people and leads by example and treats them with the disrespect and the dignity that they deserve. And today we're talking a lot about inclusivity. My master's is in inclusive education, and we talk a lot about how people who have certain difficulties or certain disabilities or certain special needs need to also be engaged in the workforce and feel like valuable members of society, right? These people have been forgotten for generations and millennia, really. At the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he would put the a blind Sahabi would be in charge of the community when the Prophet ﷺ was gone. He would be in charge of the community. He would be the one reporting back Prophet ﷺ. So he was empowering people based on their abilities at a time when these people were shunned and seen as just handicapped people who cannot benefit us. Prophet ﷺ, he would look at what are the talents and the abilities of each individual and how can they be of service to us.
Yeah, that's deep. So obviously when you're in a position of leadership, you are, and I like to use the analogy or the metaphor of like pouring into other people's cup, right? You are essentially pouring into what you have into other people's cup, but at one point you run out.
Right.
What do you do to replenish yourself? Or do you even agree with the metaphor? Or do you think that it's not that? It's just you're supposed to do what you do, and what you do in the process doesn't drain you or doesn't necessarily take away from you in terms of energy? Because I do feel that it could be very draining sometimes to be in a position of empowerment, because obviously you want to see people grow.
Yeah.
But you can't pour into a cup that's upside down. And sometimes it does happen where the cups decide to go upside down and people just don't want to grow, or they just decide that, hey, I just don't have the drive or the intrinsic motivation to do it. And I think that's heart-wrenching, especially if it comes from the heart, right? Like you said,
it is.
And you want to see people grow. I mean, you should love your sheep. You should want to take good care of them. So that is draining. What do you do to replenish yourself?
So that's very, I agree with that, man. And I, you try to take people by the hand sometimes and they reject it and they push it back. And it's hard. And I consider myself an introvert. People think I'm an extrovert because I'm comfortable talking to people and being in front of crowds, but I need my me time, man. After halaqah, I don't like chilling with the boys afterwards. Not because I don't love the boys. I love the guys, mashallah. And I'll chill with them the next day. But that night, I'm drained. And like I said before, man, my thing is Quran. Sit down, read some Quran, read the translation, think about it, reconnect, do my hifz. If I'm not good on my hifz, you're going to notice it. My halaqas are going to suck. My page is not going to do well. My reminders are going to be insincere. I'm going to look tired all the time. I'm going to be sleeping. I'm not going to be driven. when my Qur'an's on point, and this is not me, this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I feel like when I prioritize my Qur'an, I surprise myself. I impress myself in the things that I'm able to do. That's what really replenishes me. But that's a personal thing. You know, everyone has their own thing. But for me, it's Qur'an. Thinking about the ayat of Allah. Because you feel like Allah's talking to you. You feel like Allah's talking to you. And you talk to people so much. You know, sometimes you need God to talk to you.
Absolutely. Did you always have that relationship with the Quran? Were you at a point in your life at one point where you struggled to even open the book? And if so, what happened for that shift to occur?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a long time in my life where I was very far from the Quran. And those were the worst days of my life. That, you know, sorry, terrible times. I think realizing that this is literally the closest thing we have to divinity on earth, right? This is not divinity, but it is the closest thing we have to divinity on earth. These are the literal words of God. That you know, we have this mushaf over here. You know, if I were to read you a verse, that is literally the words of God. That is like mind-blowing to me. And we put barriers between us and it, such as I cannot read Arabic or I don't understand the Arabic. And I think once you break those barriers, and that's why I'm so keen on getting these guys to learn to read Arabic, because it's, you know, one guy was saying, Brother Riyadh on Instagram, he said a nice video. He said, imagine you're in love with somebody. You have this loving relationship. You want to marry this person, but they speak a different language than you. So every time you want to talk to them, you have a translator sitting between you guys. And you tell the translator, tell this person that I love them. The translator turns to them and says, like, you know, il t'aime, you know, like in French or whatever. And then they tell, what did the person say to me? And then they talk to the translator. The translator talks to you. You get the analogy, right?
Creates interference.
You lose that connection. It's not the same connection, right? Whereas when you learn the Quran, or learn how to read the Quran, at least in the Arabic, you try to learn the vocabulary a little bit. Like, there's so many Arabic words that have no real translation, and they lose the beauty, the taste, you know, when you translate them. So learning how to read Arabic, and I learned very late. I learned how to read Arabic like the letters, like fluently. I was like maybe over 20 years old.
Really?
About 20 when I started to learn how to properly read the Quran, you know, without too much, you know, hesitation. And even now I still struggle with some of the, you know, if it's not every day, you know, you lose it. And the vocabulary, man, there's lots of apps you can use. There's no excuse, man. You need to develop that connection, you know, with the Quran, and you're going to see your life is going to be different, man.
Who was the person that had the biggest impact in you in creating that love for Islam and appreciating the divinity of that book?
I would say Ustad Nu'man Ali Khan.
Allah reward him.
I mean, you listen to his speeches, man, and he just, you feel so sad that you can't connect to it in the same way that he has taught it, you know? Like, I remember I was listening to one of his speeches. I'm going to make this short because it's a long speech. I'm not going to summarize. Like, give me 30 seconds, you know, inshallah. He's talking about when Shaitan made Adam and Eve, alayhim as-salam, eat from the tree. Or he convinced them, you know, to eat from the tree. And then it says, لِيُرِيَهُمَا سَوْآتِهِمَا, so that he can expose what was hidden of their bodies. And the word li means so that in the Arabic. But it means, what it really means is like, this is the purpose of what he just did. Right. This is why he did it. And in that one beautiful, just that letter, li, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us so much that the purpose of shaitan, he wants us to become immodest. He wants us to show our bodies. He wants us to become like animals. He wants to degrade the human being. And the honor of the human being is in modesty and it's in haya. And there's so much beauty by one letter. And this is from Nu'man Ali Khan. This is what he explained in English. And I was like, wow. And then, you know, you learn that and you read Surah Al-Mulk, and Allah says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, the one who created death and life, so that he may test you which of you is best in deeds. It opens up a whole world of understanding. This life, death, life, all of it is for what? لِيَبْلُو, so that he can test you. The purpose of this is to test you which of you is best in deeds. You taught me one letter, and now I understand so much more of the Quran. It's powerful.
It's beautiful. So obviously there is this idea of, in Islam, we know that a lot of people on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be like donkeys carrying books on their backs because they've accumulated a lot of knowledge. They were preaching what they were not practicing. And there's this danger sometimes also when you acquire knowledge that you are like a donkey carrying books on your back, right?
Yeah.
Does that scare you sometimes? Yeah. Does that keep you at night sometimes?
Yeah, that does. And there's another hadith that also keeps me up at night, and it's the one that says that the Khawarij, or those who are quick to leave Islam, or those who will have no benefit on the Day of Judgment, they recite Quran more beautifully than you, but it doesn't leave their throats. Mm-hmm. And they fast more than you, but their fasting is of no avail to them. And it scares me, because sometimes we put so much emphasis on the act, and there's zero heart that goes into it. So you're reciting Quran beautifully. You're reciting Surah Al-Kahf on Friday, and it's robotic because you do it every single Friday, or you do it every week. And then it's like, have I even thought about what I just said, or has it not left my throat? It's a very scary thing.
Do you have mechanisms in place that you use to keep yourself in check?
Yes.
Like personally, I'll share one that I have.
Please.
I tend to always go back to my wife and ask her, hey, do you believe that I'm doing a good job at home in putting you guys first? Do you guys feel like you are the most important priority of my life?
Beautiful.
If she says no, then I have to go back to the drawing board and restructure my life around so that they feel that.
Yeah.
Do you have something in your personal life that you do?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of that as well, or a lot of that actually. I always check in with my wife, make sure that she's happy, make sure that she's good, because the Prophet ﷺ said, خيركم خيركم لأهلي وأنا خير لأهلي, the best of you, the best of their families, I'm the best of my family. So this is a top priority for us. I think also making sure that anything that I show on social media, I am doing more in my personal life, always, and that's a very stressful thing. But for example, if I show on social media a story of my morning routine, I got to make sure that in my morning routine there are certain things I didn't show, even if I would like to show them. I make it a point not to.
That's for Allah.
That's for Allah.
It's not for the people.
Yeah,
to see.
exactly, because I want the people's perception of me to be what I'm at or less. I don't want them to think more highly of me than they should, and that's something I'm very cognizant of. And also, like I said, the project that we're doing about the Quran challenge, every day we're doing a page of Quran. I know that this project is not going to hit the 1 million views. I mean, inshallah, right?
It could.
But it's not a viral type of idea. It's not a viral project.
Not a cat video.
It's not. I should have a cat. I actually have a cat. I should bring the cat into the studio. But it's like you said, just like you said, it's not about the numbers. It's not about the real result, because we know there are prophets who are going to come on the Day of Judgment with no followers.
Yeah,
he's not a failure. He's not a failure. He planted the tree when the Day of Judgment happened, right? That's the idea, right? It's like he did what he had to do, and it's for him and God. And it's not about the numbers. And so that, to me, that project is what that is. Everyone's telling me it's going to flop. It's not going to be a good project. Look, I don't care. For me, this is me being that prophet, with no followers kind of thing. It's like, of course I'm not a prophet, but I'm saying it's the idea of doing something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not expecting any kind of quantitative success.
Yeah.
And just doing it because we're people of the process and not the product.
One of my favorite authors is Malik Ben Abi. Do you know him?
No.
He's an Algerian intellectual. And I don't think you can understand the crisis of the Muslim world without actually reading this guy, because he is, and I encourage you to look into it. I'm sure you love him, because he combines a lot of different sciences in synthesizing the plights and the issues of the Muslim world. And while he was alive, he wasn't very popular, but he became very famous after his death. And he's the one that came up with this very famous controversial quote: the Muslims were colonized because they were colonizable. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, he argues that the Muslim decline is not due to the external factors alone, but also a consequence of internal and intellectual decay. And he examines how the decline of original and creative thinking within the Muslim society has led to their diminishing influence around the world, compared to other civilizations.
Yeah.
And he beautifully merges psychology, sociology, economics, theology to synthesize what's really happening here.
Right.
Oftentimes, and again, this is purely anecdotal, I find that we have a little bit of a very simplistic way of troubleshooting and problem solving.
Okay.
Things are not working, brother, it's your iman. Just get close to the book of Allah, right? Not to undermine or to belittle how important it is, stuff like, no, I actually felt like it was quite beautiful when you were sharing how you were so close to the book of Allah, because that's beautiful.
I don't think I'm that close, but I would love to be. The closer I am, the better I am.
Well, you definitely have that love.
Jazakallah, yes,
right?
definitely.
And
1 million%.
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But I find that our community is unfortunately oversimplistic when it comes to, unfortunately, sometimes troubleshooting how we're going to get ourselves out of our pity party and move forward.
Yeah. So I don't mean to cut you off at all.
Go ahead,
but so just quickly, one guy once told me that he told a sheikh that he was having trouble with his desires for women, and the sheikh's solution was go read Surah Yusuf.
Yeah.
And that'll fix you.
That's an example, right? Mm-hmm. If the guy doesn't even feel like he wants to read the Quran, then
And it's like reading that surah is not necessarily going to change your life. You know, like it might, but I'm saying that's like this guy has issues. You know, he needs to work on what he's going through.
So
sorry, I don't
no. The question that I'm trying to get at here is, what, in your perspective, is causing us to be intellectually lazy and not have that? Because I call it intellectual laziness, in my opinion. That's really what it is. And I'm not into bashing the Muslim community. I love my Muslim community.
Same.
I really feel a huge debt of gratitude for people like you who are proud and confident Muslim and who showed me this beautiful religion. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that our ability to grow as an individual or as an organization is proportionally measured to our ability to have uncomfortable conversations with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Going back to the photocopy Muslim.
Yeah.
You're just trying to check mark these boxes and like, okay, now I'm a Muslim because I've said all these cookie cutter answers.
Yeah.
But we also make a lot of our opinion by procuration. In other words, like, okay, he says this, and then you share, and you always, like, there's a lot of echoes. Echo chambers within the Muslim community. But very few people are able to think and forge intelligent answers and be their own voices.
Yeah.
And create intelligent analysis that are intricate, you know, about what's really happening here and troubleshoot. And I'll give you a specific example that has to do with my line of work. Mm-hmm. I went to a mosque at one point. I won't mention the mosque. That's not important. Mm-hmm. And I told him, look, based on the empirical data that I have, I can prove to you that if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we will have a 500% increase in donations because I have enough empirical data to prove that this works.
Cool.
The guy said, brother, astaghfirullah, you just have to make dua. These are all in the hands of Allah. You shouldn't be like this. You're calculating. You just put in the effort.
Yeah, math is shaitan.
That's all. That math is shaitan. you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my question to you is, where does that come from, and how do we solve this? Because it's keeping us behind.
1,000,000%, man. That's a big question.
I'm sorry. I
appreciate it, man.
I value your opinion, and I know you think deeply about these things, and you have also a lot of community experience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate. I think it goes back to what you said earlier about how the people are driven by results. So one example to what you're saying is there were some brothers who went to a mosque and they said, we think you should set up the little payment scanners at the doors, right? Like for donations, because no one has cash on them anymore.
Tip-tap machines.
Yeah, tip-tap machines, right? Because no one has cash on them anymore. Since COVID, like cash became like obsolete, right? During the entire pandemic, like nobody was taking cash. It was just card payments only. So since then, I think people just like tap on your phone, tap on your watch, tap on your whatever, get your cards, whatever. So these guys telling the mosque, they said you should get a little payment machine because you're going to boost your whatever donations and it's going to help the mosque. And they said, no, we don't need that. And they kept doing the cash thing. And then eventually they did it. And now they can't go back because their donations have gone up something like 70%.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. I mean, mashallah, because it's just so easy, right? Like, you're walking out the mosque, you see the machine, you're like, $5, When do you have $5 cash, like a blue $5 bill in your pocket that you put in the box? Very rare that you have cash on you. So anyways, this is an example of people who said, no, it's all in the hands of Allah. But you tie your camel. Mm-hmm. Tie your camel, You don't say, I'm not going to tie my camel and no one's going to steal it, or it's not going to run away. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, one time, he was walking, and this is a bit of a controversial example. I don't know if I should share this. You can edit it out if you don't like it. Basically, he goes into a mosque and he sees a bunch of guys who are just sitting in the mosque. They're doing nothing. And he's like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we are the zuhad. We are the people who just rely on Allah. We're very simple people. And he took his staff and he started beating them. And he's like, do you think the sky rains gold and silver? Yeah. Go work for your money. What are you doing sitting in the mosque? There's no prayer time now. You're not reading. You're just sitting around. Don't wait for a handout. And this is an example. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says that it is better for you to go out into the forest and chop a tree and carry it on your back and bring it back and sell that tree and make money for yourself than for you to put your hand out and wait for people to give or not give you any money. And no one lives that way. The same guy who you went to and you said, brother, we should do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're going to have an extra boost of 500% or whatever percentage in your donations or attendance at the mosque, whatever numbers you gave him, which I'm sure were very valid and very beneficial to them and to the Muslims of the world. And he said, no, it's all in the hands of Allah. This brother, I'm sure, goes out in the morning and goes to work, and he makes some kind of money for his family. And if you went to him and said, brother, what are you doing? Why are you putting in hours of work? Hours, it's all in the hands of Allah, brother. Like, don't put any hours, don't get any money, don't pay your rent, don't, buy your food, because, food will fall out of the sky if you make dua. This is illogical, and it's un-Islamic, and it's wrong. And it's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do. He says to go and seek out our rizq, just like the bird who goes out in the morning and works all day and brings the food back home. And we need to be the same way with our community. We can't think that just by making dua for these guys are going to change. Yeah. Dua is the number one thing, but you also need to do the work and to put that in. There's a lot of brothers who, I'll just end off with this. I don't know, a bit of time just for a second. When I came back, I had to choose a gym that I had to go to, because I think like having a gym routine in the morning is very good, being awake and alert and being like a productive member of society. And people were like, go to Monster Gym, because that's where all the brothers work out. And I said, but at Monster Gym, I can't bring in a friend for free. And they said, well, so what? So I actually signed up at World Gym, and I pay for the VIP membership that I can bring in a friend. Why? Because I think it's so important for young guys who want to have a good morning routine. You need to take them by the hand and bring them. You can make dua for them, but to physically grab them by the hand and bring them to the gym with you. And so now I have a pass that allows me to do that. Every morning when I go to the gym, I can take one guy with me and I can bring him into the gym with me myself. And I can't do that at Monster Gym. He has to have a membership. So it's difficult, it puts barriers. So you facilitate that path for the Muslims. You facilitate the path of showing them the work and taking them by the hand and then showing them the results and being like, look, this works, but we need to work for it. You need to think ahead in a way that will benefit the society and then put in the work, and then Allah will bless everything that you're doing. But for you to say, yeah, Allah, give me this, and you're not working for it is disrespectful to Allah subhanahu wa
ta'ala. One of the things that I understood from my readings from Malik bin Abi when he was synthesizing and explaining the reasons why we had this downfall in our intellectual tradition is because at one point in time, there has been this tendency to blind follow the leader. So the people in authority within our faith, we know the true inheritors of our faith are the people of knowledge,
yes,
scholars. But we don't have a pope in Islam, right? But sometimes we pontify people of knowledge, and it's very difficult sometimes to find the balance between respecting and giving proper value to someone who has an authority or who has the level of knowledge after years of studying. But Omar ibn Khattab himself said, what will destroy our ummah is the argument of the munafiq on the book of Allah, the misguided leader, and the mistake of a scholar. So mistakes do make, scholars do make mistakes from time to time.
Yeah.
And what he mentioned in his writings is that blind following mentality, herd mentality, okay, he says this, we should just follow whatever he says, caused this huge kind of trauma when the Muslim world was colonized, because now all of a sudden your leader, your top G, got conquered.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if on a subconscious level, you had now this kind of transfer of authority that went towards the colonizer. Now the colonizer must have been the privileged one or the righteous one, because he has the upper hand.
Yeah.
If he wouldn't have conquered, then it's like it removes the legitimacy. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Of our leader, and the leaders lost their, I don't know how to put it, but they lost their sort of credibility.
Yes.
And that created a sort of inferiority complex.
Yeah.
And that's why we see Muslims all the time trying to imitate the colonizers.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And it's kind of sad. But anyways, I digress. I want to go into some rapid fire questions with you.
Go for it. I'll do rapid fire answers.
What's the one thing in what you do that no one agrees with, but you still do it anyways? Like in whatever it could be. It could be in your routine. It could be in your professional life. It could be in do you have a thing that you do that is not necessarily popular, but you do it and you're convinced that this is good for you?
Yeah. Waking up and praying Fajr at the masjid and starting your day right then and there.
A lot of people would agree with you on that, but wouldn't have the stomach to do it.
I know a lot of people disagree, man. They're
Really?
They're like, no, you got to go back to sleep.
How could
afterward.
you disagree with that?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Those are goals.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It's the best thing. And a lot of guys are like, no, I can't do it. It's not right. I wake up later in the day. It's better for me. It's like, no,
so you do it 7 days a week?
Yes.
MashaAllah.
Yes. I try. Look, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying I make it every day, but that is my routine. That is my routine, is to wake up. If I wake up, then I go, I can pray for Fajr at the masjid, stay there. Anyways, I'm not gonna.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. Goals.
Yeah.
What's your greatest failure?
I would say my greatest failure.
And when I say great, it sounds like an oxymoron, right? But I do believe that Nelson Mandela was right. I never lose, I learn.
Yeah.
Right? So like a failure is a learning opportunity. So
I think my greatest failure was trying to find happiness in other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
Very depressing time in my life.
Facts. What's the biggest complisot that you've received? And I'll explain what a complisot is. A complisot is someone essentially complimenting you and also dissing you at the same time. It's a little unusual, I know, but it happens sometimes.
Complisot?
Yeah. I've been told, and I share this all the time when I ask my guests on the podcast, I've been told that I watch too many motivational videos. Because the person thinks I'm overly motivated. By the way, I don't watch motivational videos, but it's a compliment because you think I'm motivated. But it's also and it's also a diss because, in other words, you're saying like I'm overboard. You know what I mean?
Complisot. I can't think of a specific complisot, but I can think of a specific complisalter. I would say Adil Ghadban is my biggest complisalter. He's the guy I check in with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I think I'm doing good or I think I'm doing wrong, I check in with him and he kind of smacks it in my face. In a loving way.
That's good. You need someone like that in life.
Yeah, but absolutely. Definitely, smacks hard.
That's good.
Metaphorically.
What's the best advice you ever got in your life?
What comes from the heart goes to the heart.
What's the worst advice you got?
The worst advice I got? You need to modernize Islam. You need to change the way you think. You think too much like a Muslim, or like a yeah. And Muslims are the ones who give me this advice. They're not non-Muslims. Muslims are telling me, bro, you're backwards. No one does this anymore.
So I have to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
You're too much of a modern Muslim. What does that even mean?
No, you're not modern enough.
What does that even mean?
Yes, for example, the beard.
What?
Bro, you got to trim your beard.
Everyone's wearing a beard now. It's vogue. It's so popular. Muslim made it glamorous.
Right?
What?
Yeah, he's like, you gotta trim your beard. Why? Oh, bro, no one has beards anymore like that. You look like
that must have been a long time ago. I can't.
Dude, like it still happens.
Really?
Yeah. Regularly, Muslims say that. Things like, and other things that are a little bit controversial. Just things that I'm like, let's stay away from this. Bro, you're too much. Okay, music, stay away from it. Personally, I try to stay away from it. Of course, when you're walking in a mall, listening to music. When you're watching a video, there's music. You don't turn. I don't turn it off. I don't go out of my way to listen to a song. Right. And people, or when I get into a car, I don't put the radio on. I don't put the music on. Or if it's a Muslim brother that I'm with in the car, I'll just ask, politely, because it's his car. It's his.
Right.
But I'll be like, yo, do you mind if we just don't put this? And a lot of the responses you get is like, brah, so backwards. Are you serious, man? Or you can't have fun. You live in a black cloak under a rock. No.
I see.
No, but the music industry today is garbage, and it encourages us to do garbage things, and I don't want to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
What's the greatest investment you made into your life? And I'm not necessarily speaking here monetarily. I'm speaking broadly speaking.
I would say it is to get married young and put all of my efforts in making sure my marriage is good, making sure my wife is happy. And I'm not always successful. I mean, look, mashallah, tabarakallah, she's amazing. And she is very happy with so little. And there's many times where I haven't been able to give her everything that I've wanted to, and she's still been very amazing about everything, mashallah. But I think focusing on that makes you a more serious person. Getting married young kind of makes you a very alert, very, you have this sense of responsibility. Muhammad Ali, may Allah have mercy on him, he's giving a speech one time. He's like, I heard a baby crying. in his family, like one of his children. And he's like, that woke me up and made me realize, look, this baby doesn't care how hard I'm working. It's crying, it needs something, and it wants it now. And it's my responsibility to give it to it. There's no excuses to be made. I need to do everything I can to make sure that this child that I put into the world is happy forever. That's my responsibility. And no one cares why I can't achieve that. I need to work towards it. And I think that's something that getting married young kind of really puts into perspective. It's like, I know I'm studying full time, but I got to take care of this woman. I took her from her family and made her my wife, and it's my responsibility now. And when you have children, it's like
it's different level.
Next level.
So I know these are big questions.
Yeah.
So forgive me because I said rapid fire questions.
Please
but
go.
What do you do to stay grounded and not let fame get up to your head?
You chill with people who knew you before you became somebody.
Okay.
Because they will remind you of who you were.
Could that also sometimes be toxic because they may not understand what you're doing and they may always try to put you down in a way that's not always positive?
I agree. But it's still a reminder.
Okay.
It's still a reminder. It reminds you. You know, you don't have to take what they're saying, but hearing it kind of humbles you. A little bit, yeah.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
If you had one message you would put on a billboard for all of humanity to see, what would it be? One sentence. I know that's tough for you because you are very thorough, mashallah. And I appreciate that, by the way. I mean it in a, not as a compliment, as a compliment.
Okay.
Genuine compliment.
Yeah. I'm trying to make one sentence.
Take your time.
Okay, bismillah. You will only be happy when you make Allah your priority. And I was hesitant to say this because I don't want to sound like a photocopy Muslim answer, but it's really not. You'll only find happiness when you put your happiness in the hands of Allah.
Mm-hmm. Would you use the word Allah or you would say God? Given the fact that you are talking to everybody.
Yeah, you'll only find happiness if you put your happiness in the hands of God.
Okay. You don't see a problem in changing the word Allah to God?
No, because even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says La ilaha illallah, we are saying there is no God but Allah. Allah is acknowledging that He is an ilah. He's using the Arabic word ilah. There's no problem using the word God.
Okay.
But the preferred noun is the word noun Allah gave Himself, which is Allah. But no problem.
I was genuinely curious because I remember once I got smacked, at a mosque for using the word God.
It's smacked for a lot of reasons at mosques.
And not Allah. That was very interesting.
Yeah, you can tell them that. You can say when Allah says La ilaha illallah, He's acknowledging that He is the only God.
So the Prophet Muhammad said that, one of the signs of Iman is to mind your own business, right? And social media is the business of minding other people's business.
Yeah.
You use social media a lot.
Yeah.
Do you consume social media or you use it exclusively to just produce content?
I use it exclusively to produce content, except when I am researching trends that I can use in my videos.
Okay, so you don't look into like TikTok and go into mindless scrolling and you don't do that?
I think it's happened like twice or 3 times since I started social media back in like January that I've done this mindless scrolling thing and I felt like an absolute loser. So yeah, I don't do that.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, because I noticed that people who are usually very active on social media are the ones that don't consume it.
No.
Because I think it's just drains the life out of you.
Absolutely. And I think like the only reason it's very conscious when I do, like I'll follow very specific pages that have very similar style to me. And I'll also follow some pages that don't have the same style as me because I think it's good to see what's out there and take the good and leave the bad. It's research. It's research for me. So I'll take like 15 minutes and I'll just scroll on certain pages or I'll explore different pages and I'll see, this video got like 1 million views. It's not an Islamic video, it's a motivational video, but it talks about this falls within Islam. Let me make an Islamic twist on it. It'll get people, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It'll reach a wide audience, inshallah. It's a good topic, people like it. I'll use those kinds of things.
Very interesting. What is the right balance between humility and confidence? Where do you strike the right balance?
Knowing that everything that you've been given has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects you to use what He's given you for His sake. So feel confident in what you have, but be humble in knowing that it all came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay. Similar question. How do you become uplifted while in a state of tawbah, which means remorse?
You acknowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you to make tawbah, and that is a sign of His love.
You understand where this question is coming from, right? In a society where we worship feeling good about everything,
Yeah.
when you're in a feeling of feeling disgusting for a sin you've made, it's sometimes a little bit difficult for you to feel like there's hope or that you can overcome and do better, right?
Yeah. Allah loves those who repent. So yes, you feel bad about your sin, you feel bad about what you did, you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in so doing, you know that you are closer to earning God's love and pleasure.
Okay. So just a few questions here, because there's a lot of questions I told you I wanted to ask. So
Please,
these
go
are
ahead.
just rapid fire
I'll
questions.
be quick with my answers.
What are the books that you recommend to the audience that is not the Quran or Hadith books?
Number one would be, okay, so if someone feels far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would definitely recommend The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. 1,000,000%. That's the book that changed my life. I think everyone should read it, Muslim and non-Muslim. If you're a Muslim and you're looking to improve your Islam, I would say read Atomic Habits. Harden? Who wrote that? James Clear. Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm looking there because, mashallah, Brother Eduardo has it on the shelf.
It's an excellent book.
It is, mashallah. Those are the two books. And if you're in any kind of a relationship with anybody, I would say read The 5 Love Languages by, I want to say Paul something.
Yeah, there's only one.
Yes,
that wrote that book. So
look it up. 5 Love Languages.
What's your love language?
Definitely words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and I got to work really hard to not let the social media get to me, because people put comments and I'm like, don't let it get you. Don't let it get you, whether good or bad.
Really?
Yeah, it actually creates a big issue because my wife's love language is quality time, and one thing I do not have is time.
Really?
Try to be as busy as I can, and so that really grounds me as well, right? Because every couple of weeks my wife's going to be like, we have not spent time together, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We like drove together to your parents' house the other day. It was a 40-minute drive. It was quality. It's like, that's not quality time. I want to.
I would have imagined that your love language would have been
acts of service.
Acts of service, considering that you're so practical.
So
I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah. My father and my mother put so much service into raising us that's what I learned shows love to people, but that's not what I feel the most loved with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you do praise a lot, so it does make sense actually.
Yeah.
That you have.
I guess. I guess.
Interesting.
That's how I show others that I love them naturally.
That's good. What are the 3 movies you would recommend?
Malcolm X.
The biography of Malcolm X.
Yeah, the Malcolm X movie, the biography of Malcolm X by Spike Lee. Another movie that I'd recommend.
I converted to Islam after watching that movie.
Really?
Yeah.
It's such a good movie.
I was
amazing.
I was so ashamed of my love for Islam because I couldn't find any good role models around me to actually emulate what I needed to externalize to be a good Muslim. I had no one who I felt genuinely was inspiring. Figure
X is
in
amazing,
Islam.
man.
And I saw that movie and I'm like, I want to be a Muslim like Malcolm.
I swear. I do too. Mashallah, may Allah have mercy on him.
But the funny thing about Malcolm X is everyone praises him and respects him, but when it comes to time to do what Malcolm X would do,
no one's there.
No one's there.
Absolutely. I would say Malcolm X, his movie for sure, the Denzel one. Other movies I'd recommend. It's tough, man. Like, I know Malcolm X because that's what I tell everybody. Like, you gotta watch this movie. Have you not seen it? You're insane. You need to watch it right now. I can't think of any other 2 right now off the top of my head. I can think about it, but what's yours? What's your top 3?
Braveheart. Mel Gibson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So many lessons in that movie. So many lessons. Classic, cliche, Shawshank Redemption.
Also very good.
And Gladiator.
Gladiator's good. I should have said Gladiator.
I also love Forrest Gump.
Yeah?
For one single reason. Hard work beats talents when talents is easy. Lazy. For that message alone. He wasn't the smartest.
No.
Everyone called him dumb.
Yeah.
But he just put in the work. And he never actually thought about anything other than, I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
He outsmarted everyone with that alone.
SubhanAllah.
It's a really important life lesson in my opinion, because I never considered myself smart, but I've always considered myself hardworking.
Yeah.
And God knows I've been able to go further than a few people that had actually much more abilities than I had. And I'm not saying I've accomplished anything. I really don't feel like I've accomplished anything, but
you have, mashallah.
I feel like I genuinely felt blessed to be exposed to that principle through that. And my mother also was an embodiment of that, right? Like very few words, it's action speaks louder than words. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw, but the first thing you see in that podcast when you come in is the world is changed by your character, not your opinion.
Mashallah.
Right? So
that's
action
beautiful.
is very important. What are podcasts you recommend? Do you listen to podcasts?
I do listen to podcasts. I do not have one podcast that I particularly tune into regularly. Okay. It depends on the speaker. Like, I love the Muhammad Hijab podcast. Any Muhammad Hijab podcast, I'm always tuning in. Hamza Tsortis has a good podcast as well.
Why? Specifically, Muhammad Hijab.
Muhammad Hijab, I feel, has something that I really admire, and it's the ability to make Muslims feel empowered and confident in their Islam. And when you'll see him do debates, sometimes he's very, I would say, even arrogant with the person he's debating against, when that person is a clear enemy to Islam, like someone who's clearly insulting Islam. And not to say that person is wrong, because maybe that's just their perspective, that's what they've grown up seeing, and so they've become an Islamophobe by their context. But Muhammad Hijab is very good at showing how they're wrong and then almost embarrassing them. And that's not always a good tactic. But, in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he shows one of the Sahaba who was, standing before a war, and he put on a red bandana and he started doing this war dance in front of the enemy. And he said to the people that arrogance is hated by Allah, except in this situation. When there's people who are attacking your religion and the Muslims feel demoralized because this person seems like they know what they're doing, and then your confidence, not arrogance, but your confidence trumps them, and you show the strength of Islam, that's strengthening the Muslims, and that's a very empowering voice. And Muhammad Hijab has that, and I love that.
Cool. 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Is there a question that you wish I asked but I didn't ask?
Question I wish you asked and you didn't ask. Yeah, a lot of great questions, mashallah. Nothing comes to mind.
Nothing comes to mind? Anything you would like to share that you didn't have the ability to share?
Yes, I would say one thing that will, I think, help Muslims feel better in their Islam and do better in their Islam is having a good sense of brotherhood or sisterhood. And that's one of the things that we really missed in Kuwait, is we didn't have any community to fall back on. And people belittle the idea of going to a halaqah. They say, why am I going to the halaqah? Maybe there's not knowledge I'm going to be getting. And I'll tell them all the time, I say, I'm not a knowledgeable scholar. You want knowledge, you can find it online much better than me. I'm not the best motivational speaker. You want motivation, you can find it better than me. What I provide is a space where people can get together and love each other for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake, and get a nice reminder, have some good foods, play some sports. And that suhbah, that brotherhood, that friendship, I think is going to make the difference between you living a life where you're close to Islam or you living a life where you're far from Islam. And even your presence, even if you don't feel like you need that brotherhood, your presence might make someone else love coming to the mosque. And then that will be a source of benefit for them and for you. And there's a beautiful story. Just 10 seconds, inshallah. If
no, go for it. This is very interesting.
Yeah, there's a story of a Sahabi named Hanzala, and he was a scribe of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he went in the streets of Medina and he was screaming, Nafaqa Hanzala, Nafaqa Hanzala. Like, Hanzala's become a hypocrite. Hanzala's become a hypocrite. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu bumps into him and says, what are you talking about? Like, you're not a hypocrite. You're one of the most honored companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And he says, I feel like when I'm with you guys at the Sahaba, I feel like my iman is so high, I can almost see paradise and hell in front of me. That's how high my iman is. I feel like I'm so into it. And then I go home with my family and I feel like disconnected from that because I'm having fun with my wife, having fun with my kids. And I feel like a hypocrite because my iman fluctuates depending on who I'm with. That's a sign of the hypocrites. Abu Bakr says, we have a problem because I feel the same way. So they go see the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and they present this to him. And Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Hanzala, if you were able to maintain the same level of iman with us and with your family, the angels would come down to earth and they'd shake your hand in person. They'd give you salam in person in a physical form. وَلَكِنْ يَحَنْدَ اللَّهَ سَاعَةً وَسَاعَةً سَاعَةً وَسَاعَةً سَاعَةً وَسَاعَةً. There's a time for this and a time for that, a time for this and a time for that, a time for this and a time for that. Now the lesson we normally get from this story, and this is the end of the story, the lesson we normally get from the story is there's a time for, working hard for the deen, and there's a time for relaxing with your family and enjoying it. That's the lesson we normally get. The lesson I like to give kids, or the youth, or even people my age, anybody, is the Sahaba, when they were together, They had this boost of iman. They needed that because when they weren't with the companions, they felt their iman went down a little bit. Even the Sahaba, even Abu Bakr. Do you have a group of friends or a group of Muslims that when you're with them, your iman is so high you feel like a hypocrite? And don't tell me you don't need that, because the Sahaba needed that. The Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah needed the companions. They needed each other. They needed to gather every once in a while. They needed to uplift themselves with reminders and brotherhood once in a while. And then go back and do their private life. I feel like today we live such private lives. We're so disconnected. We're so alone and isolated in our own homes. And you need, and that's why Jum'ah is so important. You force yourself out once a week and you see the other people. I think that's very important. And I wish maybe that people would see the value in gathering together in halaqat and in masajid as sisters as well and as brothers as well. Like, it's so sad that we're so disconnected, and I think that we need that for our iman and for our akhirah.
What if you understand the importance of suhaba, but you just don't feel like connected to any particular group per se, or you have a hard time bonding or gelling? What do you do?
So I think the first thing would be important to try to find a group that you do connect with. But in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah says, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ, that be patient with الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ, those who call upon their Lord in the morning and in the evenings. وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, and don't overlook them seeking these worldly pleasures. وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ, and don't follow the one who we've sealed his hearts عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا, from our remembrance, وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ, and he followed his own desires, وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا, and his situation is in shambles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, you got to be patient with these people. And don't spend time with people who are just seeking their own pleasures and own desires, and they don't think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because their situation is lost. Be patient. Wasbir, sabr, have sabr with the people who call upon their Lord's morning and night, seeking His pleasure. And don't overlook them. These are the people that we got to be patient. Maybe you're not going to really gel with them at first, but you'll develop that friendship, inshallah, you know? And if the group of brothers are sincere and they're good, then they're going to make you feel comfortable. And they will also be patient with you. Maybe you don't think his jokes are funny at first. He doesn't think your jokes are funny at first. Eventually you mesh, you know? I think, one example with my wife, when we first got married, we had very different personalities. But today, we complete each other's sentences and we jinx each other all the time. Not jinx literally, guys. Don't cancel me, okay? Jinx is haram, voodoo, whatever. You guys get the point, right? When you say the same thing, you say jinx and you can't talk, okay, that. All the time. Because we've become like one person after 8 years of marriage, you know? But at first we're very different. And the more time you spend with somebody, the more you develop that connection.
The reason why I asked that is because I know for a fact that this is the reality for a lot of people, especially nowadays. There's this idea that if you spend time with people who aren't necessarily as hungry as you or aligned with you, they may bring you down, right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, you are either influencing or you are being influenced.
Yes.
It's never a point of stagnation.
Of course.
And it's very frustrating sometimes, and I think you could feel that too for yourself, like as someone who works so heavily in developing yourself to be at your peak performance mentally, physically, spiritually.
Yes.
When you go into groups where people feel like we celebrate mediocrity, might as well be alone, right? Do you get that feeling sometimes?
Yes, absolutely. And so
maybe there's a reason, maybe your introversion comes from that a little bit as
maybe,
well.
Absolutely. And I've been in a lot of circles where I just feel like, man, come on guys, let's do something good, let's go to the mosque, it's Aisha time at the mosque, and the guys are like, nah, let's just chill here. I'm like, what do you, I'll just leave, I'll go to the mosque myself, So it's important to find a good group of guys. But I think that when there's a gathering in the masjid, then there's a general consensus that when we recommend something good to happen, the good will happen. Whereas when you're chilling in someone's basement, it's a little bit different. So I think the context, the environment is important. So having these gatherings in the mosque is important. And then not necessarily having these chillings at home. I don't necessarily recommend people to go and chill. And like I said, I don't really chill much with people. Like I think very rarely, maybe once a month or twice a month, I'll have like a chilling where like friends of mine will come over to my house and we'll like talk and chit chat and have chips and dip. And like, this is it's a rare occurrence because generally my time is so limited. I try to spend it with my family. But making that community time, where you meet up in a community center, when you meet up in a mosque and all the Muslims are there with a purpose, I think that's different. I think people there are generally more keen on doing the right thing and pushing each other. That's my perception.
It resonates with me, and I feel like I'm the same, to be honest. So I hear you 100%. Where can people find you online?
Find me on Instagram or TikTok at Abu Jannah, ABU. I think it's a dot or an underscore, and then Jannah, Jannah. H, 2 H's. The 1 H was taken. So
cool. Bro, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. It was really fun talking to you.
Can I plug in one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Every single Friday, inshallah, for anybody in Montreal or West Island at CIC Masjid Al Chami on Ensemble Laving, we have a halaqah on Fridays for the brothers. We're working on one for the sisters as well, inshallah. Stay tuned. But for now, for the brothers, we're having that. For the sisters, actually, there's one going on 104 Rue Meridian in Kirkland. Yesterday was, I want to say Wednesday. Every Tuesday from 7 to 9 for the sisters. So you can check that out for the sisters, and for the brothers Ensemble Laving at Maghrib, from Maghrib to Isha. I urge you to come. I urge you to be among the people who are going to try to be in those good circles of people, inshallah. I'm sorry, I had to plug that in.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much, bro, for being generous with your time. I could have continued to talk with you more and more, but...
How long has it been?
2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was fun. And I usually don't like to go that long, but the conversation was genuinely insightful, beneficial. You're very gifted, mashallah. And I can see, for me, it's quite clear how Allah is using you through your voice. And keep doing what you're doing. I think, you have demonstrated, with your track record to have been extremely beneficial for so many people like that I speak with on a personal level and who really enjoy what you do. So that's my love for you, because words of affirmation.
Appreciate it.
Allah bless you, bro. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Assalamu alaikum.
If this episode resonates with you, please make sure that you share this across your platforms. Don't hesitate to also like, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell icon on my channel. Your support ensures that our conversation, such as this one that hopefully matters, reaches a wider audience. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors for today's episode, Samadi Pastries. Established in 1872, Samadi Pastries isn't just a brand, it's a rich legacy. Revered across the Middle East, this family-owned business stands out not just for its age-old traditions, but for its commitment to healthier pastry options. With offerings that boast a lower fat content than most, without compromising on quality, Samadi Pastries is on a class of its own. Their repertoire is diverse and delightful. From the rich baklavas and mamouls to the delicate knafe and cakes to refreshing ice cream, the list is enticingly long. What sets Samadi Pastries apart is their unwavering dedication to freshness and quality. Every pastries is handcrafted using the finest ingredients that are natural, ensuring that what reaches you is nothing short but perfection. For those of you who live in Montreal, you're in luck. They have 2 convenient locations. The main one being located at 5995 Boulevard Gouin West, and its second location located on 595 Côte Vertu West. From the bottom of my heart, thank you Samadi Pastries for sponsoring this video and allowing me to produce this type of content.